Okay, this is great. I'm honored to be here, everybody, and this is it's a serious pleasure for me to be here to talk to you guys. Trout Unlimited about smallmouth bass, which is a long time coming, I think. You know, this has been something that I've been looking forward to doing for about 30 years, where back in the day when I was on the river with my mentors, the Mississippi that is, with some of these mentors that I had, and people were questioning why we were even out there fly fishing on the Mississippi. Whereas, you know, now you can see it's popular, very popular. But back in those days, you had Tim, I had some of my mentors I got to give a shout out to: Tim Holschlag, Dan Gapin, Tom Anderson, and Smiley Sundquist. So I'll kind of go through each one of those guys throughout the presentation tonight. They got me to where I'm at, whatever level that might be, and that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight. So I mean, good for those guys. 3 of the 4 have passed away, which is kind of sad, but Tom Anderson still, our friend Tom Anderson is still very much alive. The region we've got here is basically the Southwest Montana version of for smallmouth bass. I mean, we have incredibly great world-class fly fishing here. Different rivers, big rivers, small rivers, they're all over. They're native fish. They're kind of throughout the drainages. And so you can kind of see the theme will be the big fish tonight. So this gentleman in the red shirt is a good example. This is one of my Nisswa associate friends. I've got a group in Nisswa. They're doctors. They're probably watching. Some of them are tonight, but they don't have to go very far. They're 20 minutes away from the Mississippi up near Brainerd. And this gentleman here is a very good saltwater fly fisherman. He doesn't really do the trout thing, but just to kind of give you an idea of, you know, who's out there. So we're going to talk Minnesota rivers tonight. I can certainly talk Wisconsin a little bit, but I think tonight I want to just keep it to these rivers right here, specifically the top 2, Upper Mississippi and Upper St. Croix. The others all have smallmouth and, of course, muskies in them. They don't really get the pressure that the top 2 do, but so I don't want to put any more pressure on those remaining rivers, but they're also very good. All right, smallmouth axioms, and this is from my friend Tom Anderson. So he gave me this probably 30 years ago, and we're kind of go through, and certain slides will have these axioms on the slide, and I'll kind of try to explain it to everybody. I'm not going to read them now. You'll see they're going to come up on the slides. All right, here we are, my friend Carl Meyer with a very large smallmouth bass. The Mississippi's got to be the first one to talk about it. It is so good. It is so good. It is one of the best in the country, if not the top one for large bass. And you've got fish like this expected, you know, each year, well over 20-inch fish, offering access points from Brainerd to Elk River, really Dayton, but Elk River is kind of the logical last one. And I mean, you've got 20-inch fish on top water. It's just hard to beat. You can't really do that even in lakes. Really great fisheries like Mille Lacs or Chequamegon Bay. There's kind of a trifecta, a triangle of bass, trophy bass waters, and it'd be Mississippi, Chequamegon Bay, and Menominee River over in Wisconsin, whereas Tim and all those guys at Tight Lines fish. The Mississippi is right here. It's super close for everybody. I want this to develop into a proper fly fishing fishery, and it is with drift boats, you'll see tonight. And so that's part of the reason why I'm talking about it like this. You can go above Brainerd and you can go below Elk River. It's all good, but I think the best places for fly fishing and drift boats are within that stretch. There's a 47-mile long stretch of special regs in there from St. Cloud down to Clearwater, and it's catch and release for the most part. From 20 inches to 12 inches, they all have to go back. 1 over 20 if nobody keeps these anyways, and 3 under 12 if people want to keep them. So it's basically catch and release. What that's done is to kind of level out the year classes. We've seen it. There's a study done back in 2001, 2003, which I'll refer back to by a gentleman by the name of Eric Altena from Sauk Rapids. He's the area supervisor fisheries up there, and I've got some data in this, but you really even out the year classes when you allow more of these fish to get to that size. Another one. I think this is the same shirt that I'm wearing. It's like, um, but anyway, this is kind of what you should expect. You should expect this each trip. Whether it's whoever you're with, you should expect good sized bass. And it's just, there's nothing small about them. You know, they're big. Speaking of big, this was a big fish. And this is one of my Nisswa guys. Um, one of my Nisswa friends, excuse me. And this fish, more often than not, the quietest takes are the largest fish. Absolutely true. So when you see this, you'll have a take that is seemingly sort of subtle or small or nothing too exciting. They're not teenage fish. These are veteran fish that are making a living out there, getting bigger by eating lots of food. They're really efficient. And when you see that subtle take, just expect something other than a little small guy. This fish was the second largest fish I think I've ever had in my boat after this is, I mean, almost 40 years now of guiding. Actually, this will be my 40th year. That's a big fish. And that's what you should expect on the Mississippi too. Fish like that occasionally. The St. Croix, designated as wild and scenic, offers outstanding fly fishing opportunities for smallmouth bass and in certain years, larger smallmouth comparable to those found in the Mississippi. What's happening there is they don't have that special reg. So we've got this, and we saw it prior to the special reg being put in the on the Mississippi. I go back to 1990. One of my mentors, Dan Gapin, took me fishing. I was working at Burger Brothers. I know a lot of you folks tonight remember me there. And I was buying flies and tackle from him, Gapin Tackle Company. And one day he says, "Let's go fishing. I'll take you out on Friday. What do you think?" And I go, "Oh yeah," because this guy is legendary. His dad, Don, invented the muddler minnow, the whole Gapin legend, and took me out. And after that trip, I went and voted at the high school in Monticello for the special reg, which has been around since 1990. We need to get that on the St. Croix somehow. And what's happening is you get that fluctuation now, like we used to see on the Mississippi. You couldn't find a fish over 16 inches. It was just, they were all, Dan and his buddies were all such efficient at catching and keeping these fish that they kept them all. So on the St. Croix, we still have a little bit of that. So about every 20 years or so, we see a peak in these fish. And I think this fish is a good example. It's not as big as some of the ones you're about to see, but we are seeing more fish over 18, 19, 20 inches now, because we had the last big boom in fish size was 2003. So 20 years or more. And we're starting to see more like this. They look like Mississippi fish when you see them. That one is flat out a Mississippi. It's a St. Croix fish, but you know, you can tell it's an older fish. This is another friend, Gary Grabko, and he's an avid St. Croix fisherman. So this is talking about the St. Croix. This is kind of what's there. So when you have this scenic value, and here's our friend Barbara Redmond, another big smallmouth that we're seeing now with this latest kind of peak in size. And so expect these when you get over there. It's scenic, crazy, beautiful water, beautiful surroundings. Here's my friend Bob White and our friend John Gierek. And those guys called me one day and said, "Hey, we want to go do the St. Croix. Will you take us?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah," right away. I didn't even look at my calendar. I just said yes. And so John was, he had a good day. He really wanted to do this. He really enjoyed himself. He wanted to fish in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and he wanted to go for smallmouth, so we did. He had a classic rod case and an old reel, a really nice reel that he used on the Atlantic salmon camp. So it was kind of satisfying for me to take him on the river and have him catch some, fish on his Atlantic salmon gear. Pretty cool. That was a big memory for me, for sure. It was very hot. Same shirt again. Hey, I must like it. I must like it. I tell you. Carl's shaking his head, but that's okay. So why else do we like the St. Croix? Because of wild places, right? My friend Eric Fast sent me this picture. He said, well, I was driving up the river with his jet. I saw this root wad in the middle of the river, and wasn't a root wad at all. It was this bull moose. This was like 3 years ago. Last year, when we were up, my friend Carl and I were up around Danbury, there was another moose being reported around. They got it on video, it was on Facebook, and it was last seen around Riverside. So, I mean, they spend time around this area because this is on the other side of St. Croix State Park. So, I mean, expect wild things, timber wolves, bears, bobcats, wolves, or moose, I should say. It's just, it's a very nice place. That's some years when we're dealing with smaller fish, you kind of got to get all your satisfaction out of the scenic value. And that's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. All right, another axiom. Smallmouth do not wait for the fly, they sense its arrival. Seriously, have seen this 2 or 3 times on the St. Croix where it's very shallow and they're up near the bank. Your fly is about to land and here comes a bass. You can see the wake. They can see it in the air coming over. They don't grab it out of the air, but they do pounce on it right away. They're very, very good at eating and staying alive, So another one, superiority of the fly rod for rivers and the peculiar fitness of the river as a field of operations for the fly rod are equally obvious. This to me says a lot because smallmouth bass and fly fishing are just made for each other. They really are. Topwater is kind of my favorite way of fishing. You've got, big fish, strong fish. You're using big flies. It's really a good marriage of peanut butter and jelly. Call it what you will. They are really made for each other. To go over some of the tackle, I don't want to sound, I just want to sound like, please get some heavier leaders when you try this. Do something bigger than what our normal leaders are, and you probably have some of these. I'm not assuming that you don't. But 12-pound tippet. They are not leader shy. They do not care. I build them out of Maxima. So I go from 30 down to 12. Time with blood knots. Maxima is the perfect material. This other stuff is stiff like that. It's good. You need stiff material to get the leader to turn over. But probably a good idea to invest in some of those. If you don't already have some, you probably do. If you're going to use an X, I'd say like 0X. Like a really heavy, heavy tippet. Sinking lines and floating lines. My favorite method of fishing is topwater. I strive for you guys and gals to get them on the top. Diver, deer hair, popper, whatever. I will resort to fishing subsurface when I have to with my friends, but I really enjoy, and people really enjoy getting them on top water. So floating lines, if you're getting into doing this, just get a floating line, have a sink tip maybe, or an intermediate line. That's fine. And we're going to need to make some casts. It's a lot like fishing out west. It's truthfully a lot like fishing out west, where we're throwing long lines like that with big, heavy flies. So we need a specialized floating line. We need a bass bug taper. So, and I'm assuming that most people in this room probably know this, but if not, the bass bug line has a really condensed front head. It is just a different beast than a standard weight forward line. It is a weight forward line, but it is much different than your standard weight forward. This one is, it's got a really crazy front taper. It's 2 times weighted. So an 8 weight is a 10 weight, but it works very well to get those big bugs out there. So here's 2 of my favorites, Rio and SA, weight forward 8. I know people are thinking, well, I've got a 7 weight, won't that work? And I just want to tell you, it's better with the 8. Rivers are big, the flies are big, the fish are strong. You're going to be glad you have an 8 weight. I would certainly use a standard 8 weight rod with a floating bass bug taper and a heavy leader. So here's the rods we use. These are Sage. They're obviously $1,100 or $12 by now, but You don't have to use these. You can go and find rods that you'd find maybe back there at a fly shop that are $90 or $70 or something. Just get an 8-weight, put that bass bug taper on there and go for it. So fly patterns for smallmouth. A picture on the right is another one that Tom gave me years and years ago. So thank you, Tom. All right, in the spring, starting about now, and I will bring up the pre-spawn fishing at the end, towards the end. In the spring, before the water temps get to 65 or 70, you've got crayfish are kind of shut down. They're not available. They're just sort of in their little hidey holes. They're not really available. So until we get to that water temp, we're using imitations of minnows. The top is a sucker, obviously, middle is a shiner, and another shiner. So I would just keep your imitations in the spring early like this on minnows. This is the one that I like. I've tied, and friend Carl and many of people have used this fly. I've designed it. Took me about a lot of years to design it. It's an adaptation of the Dahlberg Dabber, but it does really work. It's got some different materials in it, but it does. It really works. For flies that you can get at a fly shop, tequila is this one right there. When you fish it, I'm going to try to keep this at 30,000 feet to kind of make sure I'm not giving away all the things, but when you fish this, fish it on a dead drift. Keep those legs out and fluttering like this. You don't want them to fold up. Silver murtich and copper murtich. Obviously, a copper murtich kind of represents a crayfish at times, but the silver murtich is a bait fish. Definitely want to have plenty of these in your fly box when you go fishing. Some other photos from about bait fish here, and we're not focusing all year. You'll see in a second. But these are what bait fish do in the river, and I'll kind of come up with some relative natural situations here. So you can see they're relating to electrician's tape in the white tub. Then they're relating to rocks, and they're relating to a piece of wood. Well, that's what they do in the river, of course, too. So you just got to fish the cover, and then you assume that the bait fish will be there. Clouser minnow works well for that, as well as murtich minnow. Here's the big dog forage for smallmouth. And my good mentor, Tim Holschlag, the late Tim Holschlag, extremely knowledgeable, used to tell me, and anybody who would listen, that they are, in July and August, they're about 95, 98% diet is crayfish. They really get on these guys. So it's not like we're imitating crayfish all the time. We're really fishing topwater. But they really gorge on these things. You'll see them coming out of their mouth. You'll see them coming out their vent. High protein, obviously, really high protein, great food for them. High concentrations of those crayfish in these rivers. Some of the patterns you might see in fly shops around or tie yourself are some of these crayfish patterns. I would say they all have lead eyes. They all need to be fished right near the bottom. I don't know that that's something everybody's going to enjoy, but you will catch a lot of fish with these. You certainly will. Frog migration is a real thing. This obviously is a bit of a diverse swimming frog, whitlock swimming frog. Doesn't look particularly like a frog, but it does to a bass. In August, late August into September, the frog migration starts, and you'll notice it because you'll see them on sidewalks and streets at night and things, and the bass absolutely know it. So they come up shallow, they go up near shore. I've seen bass in about a foot of water, big bass in about a foot of water, waiting for these frogs to come off the bank and make their way towards their hibernaculum, and they hibernate somewhere out in the slower water, but they definitely do. And there's absolutely a frog migration, and they absolutely pounce on these things that time of year. So back to one of the actions. Smallmouth bass caught on sunk flies are a waste of pleasure. I agree. I don't know why, but it's just something where if you were to use a lead-eye fly, you're missing that take. You're missing that excitement. You're not using a floating line. Well, you could be using a floating line, but so I would say if you can get them on the top, it's more to enjoy. You get that surface strike. Kind of like dry flies or nymphs. Very much like dry flies or nymphs. Poppers obviously work well. I'm a huge fan, without going into it, too much of deer hair. This one on the lower right, for those that can't see, is a deer hair frog. Looks pretty rough, but it is an umpqua popping frog. So not only does that beginning leading edge of the popper, where you can see the face of it that's been sort of hardened with cement, not only does that make noise, but every one of those little hairs right there. That's part of the secret of my secret fly that I showed you earlier, the emerald shiner. Part of the magic is every one of those little hairs makes a little tiny vibration, and the bass can sense it. Every fish can sense it, not just bass. So I really like deer hair. They'll grab it, they'll hang on to it, whereas later in the summer with poppers, they're going to kind of spit it out. I've seen that a lot of times. So, but if you have poppers with rubber legs, that helps. That helps. So those are very good poppers right there. Okay, a fly rod held low during the retrieve is a fly rod ready. This is important. You have to set the hook hard with these guys. You can use a strip set like a saltwater fisherman or musky fisherman, but you want to have the rod tip low. And you want to use the strip retrieve like Jeff's doing here, my friend Jeff. He is stripping the line in. You can see his hands down, then it's back up. Keep the rod tip low. Keep it down near the water, in the water. Here's another example of that. This gentleman is part of a group who we take each year on a 2-boat trip. Normally, you're not that close to other boats. These are buddies, right? These are 4 people in a group, and I've got another guide in the other boat that helps me out. And so we're all together, but it's normally you don't get that close. Got his rod down low. My father was a professor at the U of M. You know, I was born out in California, where he moved us all over the country, landed here. These guys were students of my dad. And I'm like, how can this be? They're 75 years old. But they are. All right, this is Fred Birchinger here, my friend Fred. And when fishing topwater, you will soon realize that a bass senses when you're not looking. And they do. They do sense it. Now, Fred is staring at his fly. But boy, you know this. You guys have done it, and gals have done it. It's so true. They'll just, when you're looking around and they're just taking, so you got to focus. These axioms are from Harold Hollis, I think, who wrote the book Topwater Bass, Light Tackle Bass back in 1945. So I didn't make them up. I can tell you that. They are true, though. Gary Grabko, again, can get his rod up a little high. I wouldn't go much higher than this. He uses the rod really well to manipulate the fly and kind of move it around, but keep it low, please. Another axiom from that list from Harold. When fighting a smallmouth, if he wants line, make him earn it, but above all, keep the rod uniform and well bent. This is true. This is about the right. The one on the left is the right amount of flex or bend or load in the rod. Don't let it get unloaded. When they shake their head, when they jump, you know, there's a heavy tippet, a heavy big hook in there. They do all kinds of brawling techniques, and they will shake it. But if you keep it bent like that, it will keep more fish on. And when they make a jump like that, you know, don't worry about it. Just keep it bent. I'll coach my friends that I'm taking out to is to make sure you keep that rod loaded. And so it's an important thing. All right, so going to go over the watercraft that we use. And this is the whole region is switching towards drift boats, away from John boats and jets, which is great for fly fishing. And this is the St. Croix. another smallmouth in a drift boat. I've seen now an increase where up where I live in Otsego, 5 to 6 drift boats on that river each day. So it's a thing, and it's going to grow each year by 1 or 2. Not crowds of drift boats like you see out in the Bighorn or something, but certainly not crowds. But you see trailers at accesses. This is Ron Char. I took him out one day and we filmed a show for Minnesota Bound. All right. These are the guys that my dad taught in medical school at the U of M. And this is just kind of a mind blower, but it just shows, you know, good quality fishermen are doing this. They come from other places. I think in the bow of the boat, that gentleman is from Atlanta. And so, I mean, it draws people, no doubt about it. Other watercraft, pontoon boats work fine. Just be careful. There's a lot of hazards out there. You got to be really mindful of what you're getting into. This is the St. Croix at extremely low water. You can see all the cobble. Canoes obviously work really well. This is back in my early days of guiding on the St. Croix. This is up above Riverside, from CCC down to Riverside. All right, so this was my jet boat, and I went to Alaska for 3 years. I forgot to mention that. I guided up there for 3 years in the late 80s. This is what we used: 40-horse Yamaha jet and a John boat. So I came back. Everybody said, you got to start guiding on the Mississippi. So I did. And I did what was familiar to me, which was the jet boat and the John boat, jet motor and the John boat. So this, you know, it was effective, but it was outdated, and I sold it. And this photo is kind of neat because my lights actually worked. That was rare. I'll say that when this trailer had lights, it actually worked. So now it's much better. But here's a shot of guest Pete, a friend Pete, on the right there. We had, you know, the tablecloth, the table. This is before Yeti was even a company, so we were just using whatever coolies we could get. This was probably the early 2000s, and we were just using coolers. And there was no such thing as Yeti at that point. No roto-molded coolers. The jet boat is a good tool. It's kind of cumbersome. It's noisy. This, if anybody knows my good friend Bob Bickford, and he's invented the Templeton fly. And I know some. I'm looking at Tom Schnatt right there. He knows this fly. That is John Templeton right there. Now, this trip is where this day is where the fly was invented, because we were on the St. Croix for a week. We took John Templeton and his group from Chicago for 4 days each week. That gentleman and this gentleman here in the back had caught a giant smallmouth the day before. Well, we ended up in the bar at Grantsburg, and he bought everybody drinks all night long, and he drank way more than we did. I can promise you that, but I think he was maybe getting sick right there. But anyway, that was the Templeton fly. That's the history of the Templeton. Here's the deck of a jet boat. You can see right there what can happen. You hit a rock, Pete is going to go in the water, and that happened. And they call them out west, they call them floating coffins. I would just avoid the John boat completely. This is an old photo. It's probably from about the year 2000. So I don't advocate for these any longer. I'm a drift boat believer, for sure. You can wade fish the Mississippi. There's quite a few access points. Very, very rocky, very good quality wade fishing. This is up near Monticello. That is actually Cadler Avenue. And so was where my lights were working. That was actually the Cadler Avenue access in the early days. All right, here's Monticello down at Goose Park. Any of you guys that go up there, and gals that go up there, this is walking in at Goose Park and getting onto the river, which I don't think you can do any longer. But prior to me having any kind of watercraft, we did this. We waded up there a lot. This is the Snake, another very wadeable, very rocky smallmouth bass river. A lot of bass, not a lot of big bass, but a lot of fish. Okay, so now I want to talk about the habitat and the places to fish for these guys. The name of the game, per studies per my anecdotal evidence and experience is cobble. So what is cobble? It's bread loaf size rocks, and it's, you know, not little gravel or small rock, not big boulders, but cobble like that, like this. That's where they spend. I think the study says 48% of their time around these cobble. Morning and evening, they go right for this stuff. They feed on crayfish that are there, minnows, whatever. You want to make sure you're focusing your efforts on this. See, I can see a bunch of loaves of bread. I feel like I'm at Cub or something here, but you've got like right there, perfect size. See all the cracks and places where the crayfish can be? That they're going to be right up along there, right up along it. Two water types, eddies and runs, really used by smallmouth. Eddies coming up, I'll show you. There's kind of a run where you can see the foam line there. That's a run, eddy off to the side under the wood. Roots, big time smallmouth spot, right up in there. Overhanging branches, yes. Okay. Believe me on this, it's through all these decades and decades and decades of seeing this with my friends catching fish near these. Dead wood is more productive than live in the water. So people would say to me, well, really, come on. But it makes sense to me. Now I know that it's true, but the way I've kind of reasoned it out is dead wood has decaying wood debris and insects and invertebrates eating this decaying wood debris, which brings in minnows, which brings in bass. Dead wood is more productive than live. Here's another run, another piece of large woody debris. Okay, the glide. This is another one of Harold Hollis's axioms. The glide is a most overlooked source for a smallmouth bass. I learned this, Dan Gapin really drilled this into my head. We went out in the middle. I thought like a lot of young guides think they know it all. Well, he showed me a lot when we went out and fished that day. He took me out in the middle of the river and said, we're not going near the shore. I said, well, what about that shore over there? And he's just like, that's where the little ones are. Don't go over there. So he showed me these glides, and I'm going to show you here in a second, but super important. Nobody fishes them. I fish them. Nobody else does. Get out in the middle of the river, find these glides. I'll show you here. It's not working. There. This is a glide right here, and I'll show you a little bit better example. The riffle is good in the early part of the season, like now and through probably May. But sometime in the summer, July, they start to move to the, Dan called them lift. I call them tailouts. Here's you've got all three. So this is important stuff. So eddy, very important early in the year. Right there. Oh, shoot. Can't see it. It's right there. You can see the eddy right over there. Oops. Glide right here. You can see it. See the glide? Tail out, lift. The water comes up from deep to shallow, and then spills into the riffle. They are there come midsummer. So just remember that. It's, you know, you can get focused on the bank when you're going down and you're like, focus, focus, focus. But if you start looking out in the middle, you'll see these things. Run back there. That's the run. So you got all three right there. Run, glide, and tail out. Run, glide, and eddy. Grassy banks, wonderful. I have a good friend, regular friend that comes up from Iowa, and he's always asking me about, he's a wildlife biologist from Iowa. And he said, what species of grass is that over there, John? And I think I got it right, but they love these overhanging grassy banks too. So you want to throw your fly on the grass, pull it off the grass, have it land on the water. There's a multitude of things underneath there that are drawing in the bait fish, the crayfish, and then the bass. Another one, the more the fly is on the water, the more likely it will find a fish. And yeah, hard to argue. We don't need to false cast. If you can get your fly back out there within 2 false casts, you're better off. So you add up all those false casts over the course of a day, and you take 2 false casts at maximum, maybe 1, and you're putting your fly on the water that much more. So that's where that's coming from. Just kind of a look at the drift boat culture that has formed and is still developing, which is wonderful. This is Jim Thompson. You guys might remember Jim Thompson from Laughing Trout fame. I think Paul probably remembers him. Yeah. I don't know who's here today from this group, but this is a super favorite thing of mine. I definitely talk too much about it. It's called the Grantsburg Associates. So on the St. Croix, starting in the 30s, there's always been a fly fishing for bass club on the St. Croix since the 30s, the early 30s, 33. I have the logbook, 1933. All the bass they've caught from 1933 until now in this logbook. This is the 3rd iteration of this club. It's now called the Grantsburg Associates. One of my other mentors that I mentioned early is this gentleman right here, Smiley Sundquist. And he was a fixture on the St. Croix. And his partner Buzzy, Punky was his fixture his partner back then. Now it's a gentleman by the name of Buzz Schwartzbauer, who's assumed the role of the club for Smiley. Now, they would hate it if I was talking about this, I'm sure, but it is so cool. It's all the really, really, they're quiet about it. That's all I'm going to say. Larry Dahlberg guided for these guys. That's where he did his St. Croix guiding. He and Smiley were partners. So, and Smiley has unfortunately passed away too. So some more drift boat shots. Generally, you're fishing the shoreline. Generally, you are. You want to focus on that. Casting towards the shore, up shallow, bring it out into the deep water. But I would definitely encourage you to get out further into the channel. Fish the middle, fish the further out drops. Just another hard fighting bass. Yeah, this is Pete again, who just loved it. I mean, he fished a lot. And then he moved to Bend. So he moved from Minneapolis to Bend. Yeah, real fun. This is the Namakagon. We had just passed under the Highway 77 bridge and found this little place. Another nice, very nice smallmouth river. A lot of women. This isn't my mom or anything, but there's a lot of women. Barbara obviously is representing here tonight. Some of my friends over there. She caught this big bass. This is a big one. As you can tell, her husband was casting way up to the shore, and she was just casting out in front of the boat, not far. And she caught that fish. It was a very nice bass. A lot of women do this. Probably the same that go out west and fish. You can see this is 2005, so it's kind of dating me, but I go way back before that too. It's just, can't get the date off there. So again, you've got cobble, you've got structure there. This is a shot of the Mississippi up near Brainerd. Much smaller there, a lot smaller there. Kind of early fall when the fishing's good up there. Muskies up there, bass. We have other species in there. Obviously, this is Denny Gaffney again. You saw him earlier. I think he claimed it was 12-inch brook trout. And right in the St. Croix, right out in the main flow. So there were obviously brook trout tributaries nearby that brookies spend time in the St. Croix because it is brook trout temperature right now, as well as into probably April and May. So here's a gentleman caught this walleye right upstream of Cadler access on a topwater fly. It came up and hit the fly with a swirl about this big. And he was from Kentucky. He was up for a couple of days and didn't understand what he had done. Just had no idea. Like, whoa, what? So then he was staying in Rogers and he went into Cabela's and told everybody this, well, I just caught a walleye. I mean, I think this thing was like 28 inches long. And they taught him what he had done. They encouraged him and pumped him up. So yeah, the next day he was pretty excited. That's for sure. Obviously, northern pike. And muskie, I do also do these guide trips for muskie. This is last fall, gentleman by the name of Peter Whites, and his father, Scott, is another one of the U of M students of my father. So kind of an interesting situation, but he caught those both in one day. Yeah. He's a very good fly fisherman and a very, very avid muskie fly fisherman too. This is obviously not in fall and cold, but on opener on the Namakagon. Kind of what you could expect, you know, on the Namakagon. Nice fish. Okay. Wanted to touch on the pre-spawn. We've been fishing it since I got back from Montana this year in March. And this is the first year most of you probably know you can do it. You can legally fish, catch and release for pre-spawn smallmouth. They are there. They are very much going to take your fly. They're obviously very thick. You don't get a lot of the smaller smallmouth bass. You get fish like these. They're putting on weight. They're full of eggs. You can see the belly on that one on the right there. And these guys they're feeding. They're not real active when you hook them. They kind of just pull, 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 pull. They dash around and jump and splash around, but really it's a great time to catch big fish, but not so exciting that they fight like summer or fall. But it is a good thing. We're not pulling them off the beds. I'm anticipating somebody's going to wonder about that. That study shows that these bass spawn from March 28th in the study till June 14th. So they are spawning during this time, but we're leaving the beds alone. If we see any, we do not even touch them. We're fishing deep water, far away from where the beds would be. We're not trying to fish the beds. I don't agree with that at all. I think it's a bad idea to fish spawning beds for bass. So getting towards the end, I can vouch for this. Outside of Montana, we've got a legitimate drift boat fishery here. We've got big fish, we've got fly fishing, we've got topwater, we've got drift boats, we've got access, we have everything. You know, we don't have mountains on the landscape like they do in Montana, and we don't have trout in these rivers, but just take the mountains off the landscape and say, okay, we have smallmouth bass instead of trout. It is the exact same thing. I mean, I completed this float with my guide that day and I thought this is just identical to floating the Mississippi or the St. Croix or any river. This is the last slide I have. I just wanted to thank you guys for having me here tonight. And is there any questions or how do you want to proceed with that?
I do have some questions.
Yeah.
Let's see if they were listening. Okay, so I got some questions and a few raffle prize for the audience here. So the first question is what is the name of John's Guide Service Company? Somebody remember? Okay, is that it?
That's it?
Okay, the other question, that should be an easy one. What's John's favorite way of catching these fish?
Right. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, so you won already, so I'm going to give that to you. Yep. Okay. So now what we'll do is that we had a couple of speakers tonight. So it's open for question to any of the speakers. So we'll start first with the question in the audience, then we'll go to the question. Mike's going to read the question online. So any questions? Paul? Yeah.
A couple things. I just came back from a fly tying event in Arkansas. And I visited with a lot of people from all over the country. And the Mississippi River was featured. If a lot of people come up here and fished the Mississippi, but I was really surprised by the boundary waters. How many people from around the country come up to the boundary waters? But anyway, that's aside. So protect both places. So my question, John, is up by Monticello, it's catch and release. Is there anything that could be done to eliminate live bait with catch and release? They
Yes.
don't go together, in my opinion.
Yes, I think there is something to do where, yep, I'm sorry. Working on that in the future. There's something coming up that I'm working on with my friend Carl right here that could get us to that point, to eliminate live bait, artificial only, catch and release. And so I'll let anybody, I'm not going to speak to that, but there is possibility that we could get that done. Put it that way. It would be great because they are getting beat up by sucker minnows every day, every day. Not anymore, but during the winter, they're really getting it hit hard.
Any other questions? No? Wow. Over there.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. So I had a friend that brought me up to the Grand Rapids part of the Mississippi, and he was telling me how he cannot find or catch these fish in the fall when the leaves have fallen. Any comment on that?
Sure. They definitely migrate. And I didn't want to get into that because it's kind of getting into the weeds, so to say, but they absolutely migrate in the fall. So chances are very, very, very good that those fish are dropping back down to be in some wintering areas, which is, you know, identified by the study done by Mr. Eric Altena, where they put radio tags into the fish, 30 of them, and studied where they went, where they wintered, where they summered. They move on average, I think it was about 20 some kilometers in the fall. And then in the spring, they move again another 29, I believe, kilometers to spawn. So they move down from summering areas to a fall and wintering area. And then in the spring, like now, like right now, these guys are revving up, they're moving upstream. So they'll come back there in the summer, but likely in the fall when the leaves are off the trees, they had found their wintering area. And I would say look above a dam that's in the area. I'm not super familiar with Grand Rapids. I mean, I'm perfectly happy to say that, but I know there's some bass, there's some nice bass up there. I would say that's your best bet is find their wintering area. Probably above a dam up there. The next dam, sure.
I've got a question for the people here. How much have you spent on legal funds so far?
Thank you for the question. We've raised $100,000. We've spent 90, or 90, a lot of it. We're entering the discovery phase of our lawsuit, which is more expensive, and we really do need the funds. So I thank you. So many of you have asked about contributing, and we do have both a 501c3 and a 501c4. If you pick up the brochure, it looks like it's only for 501c4, which is not tax deductible. If you want the 501c3, it is the half sheet that has just our logo with no QR code because you have to mail a check for that. But we do need funds, and we are trying really hard. We're the furthest ahead in Minnesota. We're trying to set that precedent for the state and to help all the communities with the data center, especially in residential and especially near environmentally fragile sites. Thank you for the question.
Just to add to that, because our case is the very first one, hopefully when we win, that would set the precedence for every other city in the state. So it is important, and we're not just limiting our activity to Farmington. We help Rosemont people that just got a moratorium on the data centers. We've been in other locations helping other groups. So we're not just fighting for Farmington. That impact litigation would set the precedence for the entire state. And we're very hopeful that we win because, as you can see, this has been placed in the middle of residential area. This is classic case of spot zoning.
Can you just make a plug for your petition that you're, or the state petition you're trying to get signed, put a moratorium on it? I don't know if everybody in here knows about it or not. They're not paying me, by the way.
Thank you so much. Where's that? Oh, this is the sheet that will take a QR code if you shoot the link, will take you directly to a petition that's being done by nonprofits going right to the governor. We really need a moratorium to pump the brakes on this because with gridlocked legislature, I don't think anything's going to happen at the big house. We really need a moratorium to let legislation get ahead of technological change. And there's a lot of controversy, a lot of lobbyists that are pushing. It was difficult to even get a hearing for it on the floor, but it has been heard. And it would be very, very helpful if you would sign a moratorium to the governor asking to just put a moratorium on for 2 years. Doesn't mean jobs are going to go away. It means that we need to let Minnesota be in charge of the parameters under which these things can come into our state. Because right now, big tech has the upper hand. And that is extraordinarily important. So we would really appreciate signing the moratorium. If you go to our website, I believe you can access it as well there, Data Center Responsibility. Those of you who picked up our brochure, this was done before we were a 501c3. We have both of them now, but the link will take you to our website and it will, you can find a link to sign the moratorium there as well. Thank you.
If I could make a quick comment, some of these developments are so bold. There is one for North Mankato that DNR has told them you cannot get any more water out of the Hinckley Aquifer. That is only, there is even a Minnesota statute that says this is only for drinking water. So the reply back from the developer was, don't worry, we will lobby the state to change the statute so we can get our water for the data center from the aquifer. I mean, this is mind-boggling to the degree. This is in black and white that they said this was the reply to DNR. We're going to go lobby and get our water anyway.
Okay. Bob has a question.
Just as a follow-up to this, we do send out a follow-up email after every chapter meeting with a YouTube link and a copy of the presentation. And when we send that email out to everybody, including our Zoom audience, we will make sure that there are links to that petition, to the donation site, and also to sign up for the meeting that will happen on May 14th. Of course, I don't want to stop you from signing the petition tonight, but if you don't get around to it, you will get an email.
I have another question. So what's the range of muskies on the upper Mississippi? I know from Brainerd to Little Falls, but are they throughout the river?
Yep. So you're talking about the natural range of muskies living in the Mississippi. Yeah. They come all the way down to the Twin Cities. The closer you get to the Twin Cities, the more infrequent they are. But from below St. Cloud down into Monticello, the closer you are to St. Cloud, the more there are. So Clearwater up. The further up you get towards Brainerd, they are more numerous, and there's big fish throughout. but certainly you catch small muskies or infrequent, very rarely, I'll put it that way, around Monticello. There was a bit of a hatch. We started to see some more about, I'm starting to lose track, maybe 5 years ago, there was a lot of muskies this big. And I think what happens is they can't hang with each other. But we had a bunch of them around that obviously came from a hatch fairly recently. And then I think they just go boom and they just take off. And so they're native to the river. They're gonna come all the way down into Minneapolis for sure and past Minneapolis, but the numerous population is further upriver, St. Cloud and up, if that helps, I hope. Thank you for the question.
Okay, I have one question and then we'll go to the online question. So I'll ask a question to Vicky. So the fish right now, what bugs are they feeding on? Right, in Hyde Creek. So let me bring you the microphone here.
In some of the insect studies that we've done, we find a lot of midges, a lot of no, not midges, scuds. So a lot of scuds in the creek, and that's what the DNR has done a lot of studies. So the University of Minnesota has done a lot of studies too, just full of fat scuds, and they're feeding well. The fish that when we do the population studies with the DNR, we're finding really nice, healthy fish in that stream.
Okay, so I think, Mike, we got some online questions. One last question, and we'll go online.
John, what keeps you guiding?
You know, that's a great question. I've had some breakthroughs where I've had to break through things, over the years, and just love it. Since I'm this tall, the white hot passion to fish was just evident. I'm sure I drove my parents crazy. I know I did. And I still have it. I don't know. I think I want to help people find their happy place and help them find the right fish, have a good day in the water. I'm to the point now where I have a lot of guests, no longer guests, they're friends, 30 plus years. So I've been with them and they've been with me for over 30 years. I just like to stay in touch with them, help them, put them on fish. I've had some times where I've had to kind of break through that hard, there is a point where you kind of go, you got to break through it, but you just got to break through it and then you'll keep going. Hope that helps. Thanks.
We got a couple questions online. First one, can you repeat your guidance on the rod weight?
Yeah.
What do you recommend? For
I strongly suggest, and is that the question?
Yeah.
A number 8. You can do it with a 7. You should probably overline it with an 8 line floating. Anybody will find on the Mississippi or the St. Croix, if you get into those big fish, you do feel a little undergunned. The flies are big. You want to be able to throw them good distance. With an 8 is just perfect. A 7 will do, but it's definitely a little bit undergunned on some of those big bass and some of the big flies. And the windy day, you put an 8, you use an 8 and you can just punch that fly right where you want it.
No, there's no drawback to going up is what really.
No.
Yeah.
Pete, who you saw my friend you saw, Pete, he was using a 9. He used a 9 weight all the time, saltwater rod.
Next question. When you're in the middle channel,
Yep.
Do you switch out to like a sink tip or anything, or do you stay with a floating line?
I stay with a floating line. The river itself is not really super deep, but if you're in that flat, tail out, lift, glide, it does shallow up, even out in the middle. And what Dan Gapin taught me was you find a glide or a lift with boulder in it, and you just fish that boulder. And it can be 3 feet deep out in the middle, or less even. So I still stay with floating line.
Got it. With the new regulations, any recommendations on a multiple fly setup? I don't think you mentioned that.
Multiple fly set, like patterns, do you think, or just?
You have more than one fly.
Yeah, definitely in this, you're talking about this early season, right?
Any
season.
It wasn't specific.
I would have a floating line set up with a topwater fly, whether it's deer hair or popper or, pick your favorite topwater fly. And then I would have another rod set up. if you've got one and you can go get one, an intermediate line and fish it sunken, fish a sunken fly that way. You can fish a diver on an intermediate, that works really well. Fish some kind of streamer on an intermediate. You can use a sink tip if you want to have a second rod, but it wouldn't hurt to have two floating lines set up and then have two patterns on those floating lines and just switch back and forth, if that helps.
Not like popper with.
No, you can't do that in Minnesota.
Oh,
So we're in,
that isn't, so that's not included.
not
in the
allowed.
fish.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. So yeah, maybe I misunderstood. So if you fish, you can't do that in Minnesota. You can't run the popper and a dropper.
Okay.
You can't do it.
For smallmouth.
Yeah, you can't. Well, yeah, you just can't. So, yep. So I would say, yeah.
Bob, maybe that's Bob behind me. He said there was new regulations allow 3 flies on a line. Law changed last year. I'm not familiar with the laws.
I'm not either.
Okay.
Maybe that's newly formed and it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, if that is legal, I would do a popper with a sinking fly underneath, like a leech or something. Yeah.
Right.
If it is legal.
Okay.
My latest intel on that is it's not, but, and I just stick with one fly, but, you know, probably worth consideration to kind of look into it, actually.
Okay.
If that's true. I mean, it is obviously true.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the regulations.
Yeah.
One last question from me. Is there an equivalent of hoot owl restrictions for
Nope.
smallmouth fishing?
Nope. And what's happened is, as hot as it gets, that's where smallmouth are going to become, I think, a very important target and species for everybody. I don't mean everybody here should come fishing with me. I mean, everybody should do this. It's going to be great for you, but it's going to increase the opportunities for people to fly fish for a really quality fly fishing target like a smallmouth and not even worry about hoot owl. They don't care. They're very comfortable in warm water. The water gets into the 80s and they're still very active. So hopefully that, and yeah, so I would look for that in the future, just more smallmouth fishing.
Well, to the success of this presentation of yours, there's been multiple comments on what is the name of your guiding company?
It's Headwaters Fly Fishing Company.
Headwaters Fly Fishing Company. I'll put it again in the messages again. Thank